Thank you.
So
Usually your first year in
Yeah.
he's young.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to sleep.
3:45 pickups.
Oh,
3:45 a.m.
Yeah, for his flight. You guys all set for finals?
oh yeah.
Ready to go?
I think so. I hope.
How's the week
so.
look? How's it looking this week? Do you guys need to get out here a little earlier tonight?
I'm okay.
You guys are good? You sure? Okay. I'm sure the board and all their support of academic performance would be willing to cut you
We'd
loose
be
early if
happy
you
to let you go
needed to get out
early.
of here.
Hey, Mike, can we distribute these to board members?
We sure can. We just kind of put them out and about.
It might be worthwhile.
I think there's,
I'd love to see it.
I think there's e-versions of, do you know, are there e-versions of the hook?
Book
Oh, is
does a really nice job of summarizing a lot of our.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, Louise. I know.
Yeah.
Those come in the
it'll be
mail?
okay.
No, those aren't me.
It's like, are you
It's
kidding?
like
I think,
Are you
Those are the
kidding?
aren't they in a rack somewhere downstairs?
They're all over the place. Off campus. I can talk to Miranda about sending that out to all of
Or
them.
just, yeah, we're included in,
I'm not sure if there's an e-version or if it's just in print. I'll have to check.
yeah, it's not like a mail out, it's,
But we can, bring them, like said, to the board meeting and make sure you all of them. Yeah, it's really well done, the students. And then there's the Hook Junior, which is
Yeah.
the Hook
At
Junior is at
Horizon.
Horizon. We'll make sure you guys get those. Asa Clark is just taking over the whole meeting tonight.
I'm telling you, we're just so lucky.
Katie, you must love our meetings, eh?
I love it here.
Emily's here too. She's doing a trip.
Well, Brenda, despite all the property issues you guys had with hurricanes, you got off than the fire out in the lake.
Wow. You know who I'm feeling bad for? Had a deadline, and so they pushed him out of the hotels
Trip 3 for you.
to where the shelters.
Trip, right? What's that?
They've got snow on the ground out there.
Well, they just prove it.
Just this last weekend, and they showed people living in their cars. From, yeah. So they've still
not a
got it,
good look.
they've got it still so rough out there. They've got
I hadn't heard that. That's not good. Oh my gosh. It's like a scene from an apocalyptic movie.
It is. All right, it is 7 p.m. and I will call the Pewaukee School Board meeting for Monday, January 13th to order. We'll start with roll call. Stacy?
Here.
Travis? Here. Mary?
Here.
Matt?
Here.
Ashley?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Was the meeting properly noticed?
The meeting was properly noticed.
And can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, tonight we start with Spotlight on Learning, and we've got Katie Spadoni, our principal at Asa Clark, Lisa Dennis, our language arts teacher, and Dave Zindler, our learning coach. So come on up and share with us.
All right, so for tonight, we are discussing literacy practices at ACMS Middle School. As you remember, our last Spotlight on Learning was about building thinking classrooms and the math classes. And then during our learning walk, we were able to see that in practice for those of you that were able to attend. We liked the flow of that, so tonight we're shifting to literacy with the plan for our next learning walk to then be focused on literacy practices at the middle school. So Lisa Dennis teaches 8th grade language arts class at ASA and is also a member of our instructional leadership team. That's an application-based leadership team where we really try to position some of our strongest educators to be leaders amongst their colleagues within their department. And Dave Zindler is a familiar face here as a learning coach at the secondary level.
Well, thank you so much for having us here tonight. We're excited to share some insights about literacy at Asa Clark Middle School. As Katie said, my name is Lisa Dennis. This is my third year teaching at 8th grade at Asa Clark, my first year on the instructional learning team. I come from 19 years of high school teaching experience in Franklin, where I was the English department coordinator, and I'm delighted to be here tonight and to be a pirate.
Hi everybody, and I'm David Zindler. I'm one of the district learning coaches on the secondary side of campus. I also help to coordinate all of the literacy functions, if you will, at Asa Clark Middle School and at the high school. This is my 31st year here at Pewaukee School District. I'm a former English teacher and English department chair at the high school. And what Lisa and I really are here today to share with you is really the delicate balance that is literacy instruction in the 21st century and where we are right now. Lisa's going to talk specifically about what literacy looks like in an English language arts classroom, and then I'm going to take some time and I'm going to talk about what literacy looks like as they leave a language arts classroom, because it does not stop at that point in time.
All right, so to strike that delicate balance, we take a look at what the ELA classroom used to look like. I hesitate to use the word old because this is often what it looked like when I was in school, as likely it was for many of you when you were in school. English instruction back in the day really seemed to be a master class of how to be an English teacher. How do you decode the texts that have been chosen from behind the curtain as the most important texts, as those that will take you the furthest? What are the specific composition skills? What's the best quote to pull out to be able to understand and appreciate this text? And so your teacher was that sage on the stage who imparted that knowledge to you, helped you to become that reader and that writer. And as I reflected on what my English experience was like and the type of English teacher I wanted to be when I started in 2003 with a lot of those same practices. Let's take a look at To Kill a Mockingbird, which is a fantastic text, but let me tell you exactly, that's the theme. Let's talk about this and let's talk about these quotes, and this is what it's important. At the end of it, I'm going to give you a multiple choice test, and you will pass that test if you know which of the 4 choices in Alabama is where this story was set. You will have identified the characters. You will have regurgitated some of the things that I told you were important. What we strive for the ELA classroom to be today is, as Dave said, and I thanked him just the other day, your English teacher is the best reader and writer in the room, and that is important. But the skill that you're working to help your students to develop is their own capacity to understand what it means to be a human. That is the study in English. How do we take the experiences from a variety of texts? How do we look at a variety of ways to write and learn how to best express ourselves and understand the experiences of others? So as a teacher in a middle school classroom, I look to be the guide on the side in some ways, helping students to be able to choose appropriately leveled and contented texts, to be able to help them to collaborate, to conference with them and help them to best find the ways to express their understanding of texts that we cover together and texts that they have chosen, sometimes based on parameters of book club selections, for example, or based on the texts that they choose. So as we look at what it used to be and what we hope that it becomes, as Dave said, to get us into the 21st century and beyond, we look at everything that an ELA classroom is tasked with working with just on the most basic of levels, those big 7 things. And when you think about all of the smaller components that go into all of those things, the average class time at Asa Clark for English is 70 minutes every day, but 70 minutes. And so how do we accomplish all of those things? We definitely don't divide the class into 10-minute segments and try to cover everything every day. But we look at each of the class periods as an opportunity to pull as many of those components together in meaningful ways as we can on a consistent basis. So while we might have some things that happen on specific days of the week, for example, we have vocabulary instruction that starts on Monday with the new vocabulary words that are distributed to the high school and the middle school, students aren't only sitting and copying down definitions. It may be where we start. But then I, today, ask my students to get together with a weekly partner that changes every week. The first 2 minutes they have is to build the skill of communication with peers. You have 2 minutes to talk about what did you do this weekend? What connections do you share? How's the selection process for your high school classes going? So have some connection in that way. Then take a look at those vocabulary words. How can you connect to those words specifically? So students then had 2 minutes. Today the theme was cold. And so how can you take words like component and braggart and think outside the box and connect them to the word cold? Students came up with a component of a snowman would be the nose made out of a carrot. A braggart would be somebody who climbs Mount Everest, and it's the only thing they talk about for the rest of their lives, how cold and difficult it was. They're having those conversations, they're sharing those things. That was the first 10 minutes of class. After that, we worked on a read aloud. Students were working on summary and analysis. Then they had time to read a chosen book, and I was conferring with them on what they were pulling out of those texts. Then we went back and we were talking about our publication piece that we're working on. Students are writing an argument, they chose the topic, they will choose the format, they will have conversations with each other and with me. My job today was to remind them of what ethos, pathos, and logos are and how they need to appeal to a wide audience. So it is a delicate balance every single day. Tomorrow we'll come back to the read aloud that we did today. Today we worked with notes that we started last week, and it's that continuing role of all of these things coming together on a consistent basis. So chunking, which is a word I hate, but it is a good representation of what has to happen with all of those things on a daily basis for our students to be able to take those skills, work with them, develop them, and help them to reach their greatest potential as they work towards all of the components of the graduate profile, as they're setting goals on how they want to look at the feedback from their last piece and move that feedback forward to their next writing piece. Again, the old and the new, I had plenty of experiences where I would write in a paper and I hoped it was right and I would turn it in and then I'd get the grade back and that was it. And that is not the English classroom, thankfully, of today. Students receive a lot of usable feedback. They're asked to analyze it. They're asked to carry it forward and set goals to help them, in our case, prepare for high school.
And this concept of chunking, so it's impossible to get all this done well in 70 minutes of time. So what we do, the concept of chunking is we'll look at it like a 2 weeks. And during that 2 weeks, we're going to assure ourselves that we're hitting each of these components. You'll notice that reading and writing is at the top, and coincidentally, one of the words of the week in the middle school is paramount. And reading and writing is paramount in our instruction. So those are things that are going to happen every single day. Will vocabulary come up? Yes. Will grammar come up? But those may not come up every single day. But over the course of a 2 week span, when we chunk it out, they're going to get all of those experiences. And while in their English language arts classrooms, as Lisa talked about, we're also talking about how this is going to extend beyond the classroom walls. Alluding to our graduate profile in academic and career planning. So taking the lessons that are part of our English language arts classroom and extending it beyond the walls of the Pewaukee School District. But beyond the walls, or when we stay within the walls of the Pewaukee School District, when they leave Lisa's English language arts class, they're going to go to a history class, they're going to go to a social studies class, a science class, a PE class, and literacy continues. So we've heard of expressions like financial literacy, digital literacy, all expressions because regardless of the subject matter, every single subject, every single discipline is going to have its own manner of literacy. So for example, Mike is a former social studies teacher, a history teacher, and when he was teaching, he taught his kids to read, but he taught his kids how to read like a historian. and that's altogether different type of reading that's happening in an English language arts classroom. We look at our health and PE teachers. We ask them to teach kids to read, but they're not going to read the traditional definition of reading. What they need to learn how to read is learn how to read a nutrition label. So that's the type of cross-curricular work that we see happening on a daily basis in terms of literacy in each and every one of our classes, which continues this concept of the balance that we need to strike, particularly at Asa Clark Middle School, where literacy is concerned. All of you are well versed and have been instructed on the new law in terms of Act 20, on what how it's impacting our earliest learners in terms of early education. Eventually, those kids that are in the science of reading are going to make their way, matriculate their way up into Asa Clark Middle School, and it's incumbent upon us that we make sure that we accept that baton and continue the instruction that they're receiving through Act 20. And then the middle school is that balance point, because as they make the movement then over on this side of campus in terms of Pewaukee High School, we really try to emphasize the sense of authentic and relevant learning in terms of those lessons that they're going to be able to take regardless of what their career path is going to take them to. Now, balance is another key. Mike was a big part of this, but we have a program here in Pewaukee School District in terms of our action research program. And Mike helped to inspire it and help to create it. But this particular program allows master teachers or teachers who are highly proficient in their instruction to choose to really study something and truly dive in, almost like a passion project for teachers. And what this has allowed us to do as a district is we create leadership opportunities for teachers where they can see, in essence, what's going to work. We have been, for the 31 years that I've been here, a very innovative type of district, but that innovation comes in terms of we're trying things. But we need to make sure that what we're trying actually works, and that's that balance. So I bring up the concept of the action research program because, as it turns out, one of our action researchers this year is Lisa Dennis. And Lisa is one of our master teachers, and what she's trying to determine is what role is test prep playing in our English language arts classroom. We know that in the best interest of our students, we need to do things right by them in terms of their reading and their writing. But we also understand that we live in a world where test scores are public, and people want to know, where those test scores are. The problem is that sometimes those don't necessarily speak very well with one another. So what Lisa's project is looking to do is to see if we can find that sweet spot. I've stolen a little bit of your thunder and talking a little bit about, I'm going to step aside and let Lisa talk a little bit specifically about her project.
No, that's fine. So really what I'm trying to take a look at, and I'm just in the research phase to see what's out there. And I can tell you that what's out there when you start digging into test prep is that test prep is toxic, because test prep is traditionally classified as take your curriculum and push it to the side and prepare students for this test exclusively. And that's not at all what we are talking about. The idea came from a meeting I ended up in at the beginning of the year with Anthony and Dave, and brainstorming ideas of how can we take what we believe in terms of authentic literacy, and this is what guides the work that we do to help prepare students to be able to read for every type of reading they encounter, but also acknowledge the fact that when students sit down in front of a baseline test like the STAR, the pre-ACT, the ACT itself, there are specific components of that test that they need to be able to read like a test taker, read like a I forget the number now, 36er. I didn't get a 36 on my ACT. Close.
35 was pretty good though.
Thank you. But the idea being that, I've experienced in my classroom, students sitting down in front of the pre-ACT, they have very limited experience with multiple choice tests, and that is purposeful, that it's not authentic test assessment, right? But it is the test they're being asked to take. So what kind of prep can we provide for them to help them feel more comfortable? I remember suffering through mathematics tests that were timed, and that went away in my experience. And that kind of stress, though, is real when students do not have a lot of experience with that specific type of test taking, and then suddenly there they are. You have freshmen and 8th graders sitting in front of the pre-ACT, and it's like, you have 5 minutes left, and kids are crying because they're like, I'm only halfway through. So it's not only the great work we do to prepare students for all of the content that they are going to encounter. And it's not only the great work we do making sure students have the opportunity to take the pre-ACT multiple times and a practice ACT and everything else. It's also, what do these test questions look like? What kind of practice is necessary? So that's some of the work that I'm going to hope to delve into in the next couple of weeks. Any questions we can answer for you?
Since you brought it up with the test prep part of it, knowing that one of the things that's out there that is a standardized test that all those eighth graders, sixth, seventh, eighth graders take is the Wisconsin Forwards exam. Is there anything in terms of, can you relate to what you presented to us, how that gets translated into the classroom?
Sure. I mean, I think specifically are you speaking to the test prep for that specific test?
Well, the test, but also the components. What are because those tests are designed to determine a certain level of knowledge and competency in reading, writing,
Absolutely.
comprehending, spelling, all that kind of stuff. Can you talk to any of those and how your program is addressing some of that?
Absolutely. So separate from the test prep, which we really try to focus on, the capacity for students to be able to work through a passage and answer questions on that. The reading comprehension portion of any test, forward, STAR, pre-ACT, ACT, is going to focus on a student's ability to be able to understand vocabulary and context, to be able to determine main idea, to be able to comprehend how the different components of a text work together to illustrate how conflict works and all of those components. Those are the types of things that when we have students reading independently, we are asking them to apply those specific skills to that reading. When we're doing whole class work, either with passages, entire texts, those are the types of skills that we are specifically practicing. So when they are sitting down in front of a text, being asked questions about that passage, those skill components should be familiar for them.
So, and do you get feedback on those specific components about each student or not in terms of?
We do, absolutely. So we have access to data through Qualtrics. We're able to look at how students have performed on particular tests all the way down to what types of questions are students struggling with, and the work that we do 6th, 7th, 8th, across the district in terms of PLC work is often related specifically to where are the specific areas that students are struggling, and how are we adjusting our instruction and assessment to be able to help make gains in that way.
Well, and Katie pointed out last time when I asked questions about this. So, we have these externals, so again, the forward exams and then the ACTs, but also the things that we do on a day-to-day in the classroom. And Katie, give us the answer to, how do the teachers kind of really make that happen on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so as Lisa mentioned, when we get the forward data back and we're able to see it at that macro lens, we're able to look at our curriculum and our pacing and see what we need to adjust and bolster as it's tied to our units of study within the grade levels. And then as Lisa mentioned, when she's conferring with students when they're reading their own text, she kind of knows what those skills are and she's able to make anecdotal observations from the student responses. Oftentimes the grade level 2 will create some short passages and be able to calibrate and see how kids across the grade level are doing. So while we're not taking specific forward related questions and applying it throughout the course of the year, those observations that we have on an annual basis will fuel our approach to the classroom instruction to make sure that we're tending to the things that we need to tend to improve student learning.
And that's also then fed back, if you will, to the parents and the students themselves, right? So that they know where they might have some opportunities for improvement, so to speak, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Larry, to go back to the beginning part of your question, in reference to the Wisconsin Forward, that test is aligned to the Wisconsin, in this case, language arts standards, which is the foundation of our curriculum in the classroom. So the standards that the teachers and the students are working on in the classroom are the exact same standards that test is based on.
So this is a little bit of a trick question, so I apologize for that. So on the DPI website, they actually have practice exams for whatever it is, the 4th through 8th grade or something like that. Have you guys ever looked at any of those? And are they shared with?
And the kids can use.
Yeah.
And are those practice exams realistic of what actually shows up on real exams?
Yep, it's a subset, and we've had students practice them as well, right? There shouldn't be any surprises as far as the tools that kids can access to help them with the exam. There's a line that can kind of scroll down to help kids as they're reading. There are sticky notes. All of those are accessible to every student, and so we intentionally practice those things and put them in front of kids before the test. And to your point, there are all the subsets that mimics the actual forward exam that we look at before any test period, right? So that's something that we do intentionally to prepare for the test, but we also, again, that balance, want to ensure that that's not just a March thing, right? That we're not just doing that to gear up for Wisconsin forward season, that it's woven into what we do and how we respond and use data to respond to student learning.
So when is it going to occur? When will those tests be?
It's in March. It always depends upon spring break because they plan it right over spring break every year. So that narrows us to like 2 weeks of the school year. So that's still being nailed down for finality, but it's always in the spring.
Thank you for the question or answering. So,
A question, I can't remember who brought it up. What does it mean to read as a history teacher?
There's a concept that's called disciplinary literacy, and every particular subject, its own discipline, has its own manner in which we read. So, for example, if you're reading like a historian, as I mentioned, Mike was a former history teacher. So, for there, you're reading to glean information. So the texts are altogether different. A text that is read in a history class is going to be different than a text that's read in an ELA class, and different than a text that we read in a science class. For example, we talk like read like a biologist, and if I'm reading like a biologist, I'm looking at data that they collected through some experiments that they might run. So the manner in which you read and the skills required of the reading are going to differ. So the reading, we still read, but the manner in which they read the text itself and the skills required to read it are going to be different.
Could you say what those are?
What are the different skills? So, if I'm reading like a scientist, okay, the reading that
if you would do the history,
do the history,
please.
What I'm looking to do is I'm looking to figure out what the context was of an incident that occurred historically. So, for example, a piece of history, we're talking about the Civil War, for example. So if I'm reading as a historian, I'm reading in terms of, from the text that I'm reading, what are the different contexts from the different groups. So for example, if I'm reading from the Southern slaves, how would they in essence, interpret what happened in terms of their interpretation of a particular event versus the northern states. So really what you're getting at is
There's the perspective from the era as well.
Yeah.
There's because the cultural perspective, the things are viewed differently at different times in history. The perspective of who wrote the history, those are examples of really important considerations of reading like a historian, right?
So if I'm reading Shelby Foote, 3-volume series on the Civil War, why am I not reading Shelby Foote as Shelby Foote?
I'm not
I understood
understanding the
what
question.
was just put forward here, which I'm not sure I did. I have to read Shelby Foote. Before I can read Shelby Foote, I have to have a whole lot of other stuff, perspectives.
Correct.
So that's my question. Why am I not just reading Shelby Foote as Shelby Foote?
Well, again, it's
One
an
of the-
example of when you're looking at, as you're developing this in a classroom, right? And you're talking about so when you're teaching a history class, you want to think about how historians look at and analyze history. So just to take a student who has no perspective or context and just give them a text, they may be able to discern some understanding from it, but if they really bring perspectives and understand that they have to consider bias of perspective, those kinds of things are learned skills and dispositions.
I guess I'm confused because Shelby Foote obviously is a perspective.
I don't know what Shelby Foote is. What is that, a particular work on the Civil War?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Probably the preeminent work on Civil War, other
Okay.
than Bruce Canton, who did the North version of the same thing. But
But again, if
It
you
was
don't
a-
know
it was a-
anything about that historian, you don't know what his perspective was. So the point is that if you're, to try to help answer your question, since I taught history, was that if you're trying to develop disciplinary literacy in the context of history, you would want to know how maybe that like what else did that historian write? What
I
is the
understand that,
perspective, what
but
is the era
whose
that that historian wrote?
perspectives, if it's not Shelby Foote, if I'm a student just reading Shelby Foote, that, I expect I'm gonna get a perspective of Shelby Foote. That's kind of understood. That's what we used to do all the time. And so far what's on the table is, I don't get to read Shelby Foote with Shelby Foote's perspective because other perspectives are gonna be fed into that before I even read Shelby Foote. So then my question would be, well, whose other perspectives are informing how I'm supposed to look at Shelby Foote rather than me just reading Shelby Foote?
So, Dave, I don't know if this is helpful, but Mary, reading comprehension and reading analysis, right? How you read a primary historical document is much different than how you read a To Kill a Mockingbird. You are still reading, but the analyzing piece is different, how you look at that text.
Mary, I'm struggling to answer your question, and the reason why I'm struggling to answer your question is because I don't have the background knowledge on Shelby Foote or the Civil War, as I'm not a history teacher.
I'll take
But-
but I think it was you, because you're the only male voice here.
I did.
You said, we teach them how to read as a history teacher, and then you went on and said, we teach them how to read science material as a science teacher. And I didn't even understand what that meant. Because I mean, are you talking that you do this with middle schoolers?
We do. So
Who barely read in the first place?
they read.
I understand that, but they've only been doing it for like 5 or 6 years. So I guess my question is, why aren't they just straight reading? Which seems to be what you're saying, but I'm not sure.
They are reading, certainly. The texts, the component parts of disciplinary literacy involve two different pieces. You have the strands that the texts are going to be different. So when we talk about disciplinary literacy and reading like a historian is going to read a primary source document.
Right.
So that's not a text that they would be reading in Mrs. Dennis's English language arts class. They'd be reading a To Kill a Mockingbird or a Huckleberry Finn or something of that nature, a piece of fiction, a piece of literature. Whereas nonfiction, informational texts, those are read in history classes and science classes. Much of the standardized tests that Larry referenced in terms of the Ford exam, in terms of pre-ACT, the ACT test, the ACT being the preeminent test that evaluates at the high school, the reading test, 10 questions are fiction. So a literary narrative is what it's referred to. 30 of the questions are nonfiction. One of the passages is from a historical document, one of the passages from natural science, and one of them is from the humanities. So in essence, interpreting poetry, if you will. So there's different type of texts that are read in each of the different subject areas. And that's one part in terms of reading like a historian or reading like a scientist, if you will.
Thank you.
Dave and Lisa, I just want to commend you, the list of, was it 7 items? I think that it's so comprehensive. As a non-educator, I looked at it and was like, wow. I appreciate how you kind of talked about breaking it down, but I appreciate the innovation that this district and teachers and coaches have always done to not rest on the laurels of how things were done in the past or how we've done it forever, and to just always try and challenge each other to do something better, and I really appreciate that, so thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
To piggyback off of Stacy's comments, that first initial slide where you gave the components of a literacy classroom, my favorite is the most positive change we've made to education, which is teacher as guide on the side. And I've personally seen this when I've gone on learning walks and teachers guiding the students so that the students are the focus of their education. They're the driver. So thank you. Keep up the good work.
Was that brought up as a new idea?
Was what?
Teacher's guide, was that a new idea?
You know, I guess I just think back to my days in education where teachers were more, they stood in front of the classroom and they talked at students. And I love that we use that concept of talking with the students and allowing them to help drive their education and their learning experience.
Is it a new idea? Are you presenting it as are you complimenting that it's?
I don't know that it's a new idea. I just appreciate it about our school district.
I think it's just a perspective of what we try to do, as opposed to I'm standing in front of a group of students and telling them what is the most important part of anything we're doing. I'm trying to help them to develop the skills to be able to not only engage in the learning in ways that will inspire them to continue reading when they have so many other options of ways to spend their time, but it's through one-on-one conversations, it's through small group work. But again, that balance exists of it is also through mini lessons. If I'm doing my job every day, I am sharing with my students exactly what I know and what they need to know, and then challenging them to use that information and apply it. So before last week, my students in the quick little thumbs up, thumbs down, have you heard of ethos, pathos, logos? Have you heard of Aristotle? You know, they were kind of all over the board. So for some it was review and for some it was new. I'm sharing that knowledge with them to help them understand how they can appeal to an audience in their writing. And then it is on them to be working to develop their credibility in their piece by including a variety of sources in the paper, to develop an emotional connection by knowing their audience. I was using Ms. Spadoni as an example. Students are sometimes writing about, school policy that they don't necessarily agree with, but we talk about things like, I know as an adult and as the educator in the room that you need to pay attention to your audience if you are going to be received by that audience. So that's where counter argument comes in, and understanding the tone that you take and all of these things. I know that, I share that, I challenge them to use it, and that's how there's the balance between you are taking what we're learning and applying it through a lot of choice, but also there are expectations of demonstrating those skills and that understanding.
Do you have government speech in your class?
Do I have government speech?
Yeah, just as an aside, a section of speech, a section of words, a section of material that is presented to students as government speech and not to be questioned because it is government speech?
I do not.
Okay.
No.
Anywhere in the district, are you aware of that? It's come up in other districts, so I'm just wondering if we have
I'm not familiar
things that are put aside as, no, this is it, and we're not discussing this as a debatable item. It's called government speech, and we don't have that.
That's not something I'm familiar with or have
Thank
heard
you.
of.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much for your time tonight. We look forward to visiting some classrooms then on learning walks to see some of the literacy work. I thought that worked really good with the thinking classrooms with math. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have our student board representative report. So I'll turn it over to Natalie and Anna.
Okay, so this is our January board report. We're just going to be sharing on a couple topics. So the first thing that we really wanted to highlight was the Insight courses. So first off, we wanted to talk a little bit about the Global Insight course. On December 19th and 20th, they held their first ever treasure trove. Teachers Mrs. Lang, Mrs. Straub, and Mr. Blayosh all kind of led this. They organized this, they put this all together. And essentially what happened was students set up tables that they decorated with their own little decorations, and they presented a product and a business that they had actually created in class. This was really great. It was during blocks 1 and 2 in the auditorium atrium, and then some groups also did it over lunch, but that wasn't everybody. This gave a chance for students to kind of get an idea of what Global Business Insight was like, but it also taught students like customer service, how to create a business, profit margins, marketing, all of that. It was really important for those like essential classroom skills. There was tote bags, sweatshirts, and more for each business that was selling. And each business paired up with a nonprofit to kind of donate funds to, and then taught what it takes to run a business and the value of sufficient planning, and helped to helping students find their way when it comes to the business world who are interested in that.
And it was really great for students, like Anna said, to kind of get an insight of what global business is, because I never took it, but all students got the chance to go down there and buy products, so it wasn't just like them, like they were literally selling what they were creating. So I included a little screenshot on the right. That's one of the businesses that was there. It's called Wisco Links. They were selling golf apparel, so students could buy those hats. You can see a bunch of pictures, but like Anna said, they partnered with a nonprofit so they could donate their funds that they actually made to the nonprofit.
Did all of the businesses have an Instagram page that they had to set up?
Not all of them.
Not all
There
of
was one group I know that was pairing up with a nonprofit that had specific rules to like a team, so that didn't really allow them to market at first. However, for my group, like we paired up with Positively Pewaukee, and it was really great because we got to receive feedback from admin. We got to present to them our business plan, and yeah, it was a really great experience. A good
Are
process.
items still for sale, or was it kind of just a thing for that?
Most businesses I do know are still selling their stuff. I think it kind of depends on the business. I know that one of the design companies for hoodies and sweatshirts hasn't actually began fulfilling orders yet, just because of those team placement rules, but you can still place an order with them. If you'd like, I can send you the contact.
Would you please?
Yeah, of
Great,
course.
thanks.
For our Impact Insight, they held a fundraiser during the boys basketball game on December 19th. This was called Holiday Hoops. It was basically a philanthropy project for fundraising for the Children's Hospital of Wisconsin. There was games for kids such as like poke a tree, face painting, and donation amounts varied so parents could come up, have their kids play a game, and donate any amount that they would like. And they raised over $200. And then they're also working on the Warriors Wear Red event, which is also coming up, so keep a lookout for that one. For the Serving Others Insight, they kicked off their capstone project, which was an initiative started by Junior London Davis. It's called Gowns for Giving, Dresses for a Cause, and essentially what they're taking is donations from like prom dresses, and they're reselling them at a more affordable price. So the dresses are collected between January 2nd and February 21st, and the drop-off is at the Pewaukee High School front office, and profits are going to Lake Country Caring, which is a nonprofit, and we wanted to thank the Drama Club for donating an entire rack of dresses.
Okay, and then we're also going to touch on the Winter Choir concert that happened back in December. So obviously, if you weren't aware, the Winter Choir concert included many holiday-themed songs. It was organized by Tasha Igalski and featured all the choirs that PHS has to offer: freshman, mixed, varsity, treble, men's, madrigal. And we had a group perform called the Dazzling Dynamics. It was started this year by some juniors at the high school. It's an a cappella group, and so it's like a club, but they were able to perform at the choir concert. It was really cool. And yeah, they're continuing that club this year and hopefully for many years to come. So it was really cool to see them debut. And then the holiday cart. So Sarah Kennedy and her students at Horizon began planning this holiday cart about 3 weeks in advance to their launch. The holiday cart is connected to academic skills, so students can apply what they have learned in class, such as kind of like global business, cost, how many items is needed to fill the cart, how to market, how to sell, that idea of public speaking as well. And so the students presented this to an admin member for funding to work on their public speaking skills. And then they put on elf hats and pushed around the carts. They were selling chocolate, chips, kind of concession type items, and then finished by singing Christmas carols. So it was just a really great way to see those academic skills and learnings put into practice, and it was really fun to see. Where am I pointing? What's going? Is it over here? Oh.
It'll come back in a
I
moment.
might have killed it. Oh goodness. We can always just. We have up on the screen.
We have it too.
Okay,
so if you want to
perfect.
keep talking.
We're on to salutes and recognition.
Yep, we're just highlighting some salutes and recognitions. So, like we said, all the teachers involved with coordinating that treasure trove, super cool. Hopefully that can continue. Mrs. Rayla for coordinating the Pulsera project at PHS. We talked about this last board meeting, but just kind of highlighting her and all that work that went into that. This upcoming week during exams, the seniors of Student Senate are running a bake sale to raise money for our senior sunset and senior picnic. So just a shout out to all the coordination that's going on with that. Mrs. Guinier over at the high school is helping us with that. And then Amy and Aaron had Tarian plus all the support that went on to put on the Hooping for Juvenile Diabetes event that happened this last December. They raised quite a bit of money, and it was just a really overall great community event. This is the second annual one that's occurred, and just a really great cause. And then we included the idea of students and staff at PHS, the entire district, just making it through a great first semester. So many positive things have happened. We've gotten to share so many cool events. So just a really great way to kick off the year. And then we have athletics and activities.
For our athletics and activities, I know we kind of already mentioned, but the Dazzling Dynamics were holding their first performance. Since it's a student-run group, that's just a really great way to get students kind of involved in what it takes to start a group like that. For the rock climbing team, they placed 5th out of 39 teams at their first competition, which included Emily Rice and Tyler Golicky at 3rd place and Sean Williams at 2nd place. For wrestling, they had a 2-1 record, not including tournaments. The team had an amazing win at the theater throwdown with a score of 54-20. For basketball, for the boys team, they have a record of 7-3 and a 4-0 conference record. For the girls team, they have a 12-2 team record and a 6-0 conference record and are ranked 19th nationally. And then Giselle Janowski reached her 1,000-point accomplishment. For the dance team, they placed 5th in D2 Hip Hop at the Watertown Invite, and regionals are coming up January 25th. And they also hosted the Pewaukee Pirate Pursuit on December 21st, so a big thanks to all the volunteers that helped out with that. It was a dance competition that was taking place here. For intramural basketball, they just finished up their second rounds and are continuing on to their third rounds. For boys hockey, the Waukesha Wings, they have a 4-7 team record and 3 straight conference wins. For Science Olympiad, a couple weekends ago, they actually competed at Slinger High School, and they had a lot of podium results. But they had first in the helicopter with Maz Tureen, and in disease detective with Shivam Kendall and Mia Tullis.
Yeah, big overview of all the great athletics and activities highlights that are happening. And we'll take any questions if you have them, or comments.
Great job, ladies. Very thorough.
Yes,
Thank you.
Great report, thank you.
thank you. All right, Tammy, do we have any comments from citizens?
We have no comments from citizens.
Okay, so next is salutes and recognitions, and I'm going to start out by saluting Mike and anyone that helped him to do the theater throwdown, or as I call it, the wrestling smackdown, and senior night. It was a really great event. I know Stacy and I went. It was just well organized. It was a unique event. And I fear that you did so well. We'll have to do it every year, but thank you for that great event.
Thanks, Brent.
Brian, if I can just add something. So when I got there, John Stengler was standing in the back. And not that he's not a fan and didn't want to be there to watch the wrestling, but he was really there to make sure your smoke didn't set off the smoke detectors.
Yeah, right.
And I just think that shows a level of dedication for him to come into an event after hours, just simply to make sure everything went smoothly and it was okay.
Yep.
It just was really great.
I want to salute Allie Olson, the middle school band, the band teacher.
Yep.
I thought she did a really great job at I didn't see the choir piece, but the band was pretty darn good. I think for all those 6th graders who are just starting to learn instruments, they did a really great job. You were there, right?
Yeah,
I
last
thought
Tuesday night.
it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard really good things for that.
Edmund, do you have anything?
You guys have anything? I would just continue with you mentioned Stacy and Brian with the event. First time we ever did a wrestling match on a stage, no one flew into the audience, which was a good thing. But to Stacy's point, we had Olivia Gill, John Gahan. So because there were we were able to do a lot of special effects, right? We can't do that for a regular one. There were videos and those kinds of things, and smoke was requested, and James Sevens accommodated the team for their introductions, but yeah, they do have to. We have had performances in the past where the smoke machine has set off the fire alarm, so we have to take some specific strategies so that you're able to use that and not trip that. So between that, Jeff Behrens, Jane Matter, who ran the score clock and scoreboard, Jeff, who did all the announcing, James with all the lighting and all those kinds of things. Brian Sniff even helped me set up the mats on the stage. So
Jeff Behrens has like a wrestling announcing voice. It was a voice I've never heard before out of him.
well, he's a wrestler and a former wrestling
know.
coach, so he's
Like, wow.
he brings that passion out, so it's good. But yeah, I know he's pretty good at that. He's pretty
It
good
was
at
impressive.
that. But the point is, it takes a lot of people to make an event, kind of a unique event and we had never tried it before, and everybody was really willing to try something new, and it turned out great. So.
All right, moving on to consent agenda. We'll be accepting the minutes from previous meetings, correspondence included in your packet. 3 wonderful gifts. 2 were for the Pewaukee Athletic Department. $1,500 cash was donated by Curly's Waterfront, and another $1,500 cash donation was from Gardner Foundation. The 3rd gift is from Barbara and David Erickson for the high school robotics team, and their gift was $5,000. Wow, thank you so much to these organizations and individuals that gave so graciously to our school. And also we'll be accepting the policies that were listed in your materials. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
Moving on to business affairs. Stacy.
Yes. So we had our business affairs meeting this evening, and as expected, we took out a line of credit just to make sure we had enough cash to cover the December payroll. And we did have to borrow $1 million on that line in December, but we paid it off. I didn't write that date down.
January 7th.
January 7th. So that's a great way for us to manage our cash flow and not have a lot of interest incurred. If you look at our P&L, we are sitting at 12% of revenues collected, which the big chunk of that was in December. We received the second installment of our equalization aid, which was about $2.1 million. We're sitting at about 39% expenses spent, which is, we're halfway through the year, but obviously that's not 50%, but June is a big expense month, so that is tracking as expected. We went on to discuss the OPEB, or other post-employment benefits. Our net liability for that sits at about $2 million. We have a supplemental pension plan. That liability is going to be a pay-as-you-go, but we have a liability right now in the books of $318,000. And that we wouldn't start paying out. The first payments for that would be 2033, because the plan was started in 2013, and it's 20 years before we have to pay out. John talked to us about the handbook, and I'll give a little summary. John, jump in if you feel like I'm missing something. We talked about the health insurance, which we are now self-insured. Everything is tracking as predicted. The projection for premium equivalency rates will be developed by April 15th. And we talked about the compensation model, and the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, for collective bargaining purposes is estimated at 2.97%. So John and his team use that to help frame employee raises. Got anything else you want to jump in on?
Yeah, those are the major, and it's really this time of the year when we're looking at budget development and what are some of those areas where reconciling the budget may have an impact on the language that we have in our handbook. So it's really giving a precursor to what are some things that are out there, what are some of those big ticket items that are large buckets of the budget that have to be analyzed every year.
Kind of an off the topic maybe question, but John, the tax bills go out in December. Your name is associated with the Pewaukee School District. Do you get very many calls from taxpayers regarding the school district levies?
It depends on the year. I think in the last 10 years, the most I've had is about 45 calls come in. Typical year is 3 to 5, and most of it is an explanation. I'm new to the community. There's 2 referendums on my bill. What was done there, and how long is it going to be there?
That's the kind of, do you have any in December or January now?
1 so far this year.
Great, thanks.
Motion to approve the business affairs report as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Moving on to new business. We have Emily Juicelers here, I think with some other folks, to talk to us about the Europe-London trip.
Well, thank you for having us. I am Emily Jusla. I am in my 11th year at ACMS. I am a 7th grade ELA teacher, but also dual certified English and Social Studies, 612. So part of this travel experience has also been my crossover of those categories as well. And then I also have Mr. Scott Rail with me to join.
I am Scott Rail. This is my 19th year in the district, so I've been here for quite some time. I've taught some former students as well as some current students as well of your own kids. So I teach the STEM and engineering. I like to say that I am a big part of it because that's a big part of what I do. I started here just teaching science, and then I've continued to develop the STEM courses that we have. I took part in the London trip last school year. It was a phenomenal trip. I have also traveled to Scotland myself back in 2003 when my twin brother studied abroad. So I have been in that. I've been to Scotland as well. I got the travel bug when we went on this last trip to London. It was an outstanding experience for the kids. It truly was a way to open the doors and to be able to see things from a global perspective. So I'm excited to be able to share a new proposal as well and see whether or not we are able to get approval. Rihanna?
And then just jumping in, we also have some student guests here tonight. So Rihanna Heck actually was part of the originator of our London trip. So for those of you who were here the last time we did a proposal back in 2022, this London experience at the middle school actually stemmed from a student project. We were going through the launch cycle. So identify a problem, let's work towards a solution, and then actually pitch that solution to an authentic audience. So very similar to what Lisa and Dave were talking about. And the problem that Rihanna's class identified was that middle school students don't have the opportunity to travel until later in their educational careers. And sometimes students that may have IEPs or other needs are exempt for one reason or another, whether it's, they don't need to take a language or something of those sorts, that they then sometimes miss out on those opportunities. So we wanted to start something that all students were able to partake in, and Rihanna was one of those kids that helped us work through it. So she's gonna share a portion of her reflections on where we started, kind of going on the trip, and then life after the trip of how that impacted her and going forward. And then we also have Owen Zemer. He is a current 7th grade student who is very excited about Scotland, and he's going to share some of his passion about Scotland as well. So you'll be hearing some student voices, not just Scott and I.
Hey, as she said, I'm Rihanna Heck. I'm a sophomore here at Pewaukee, and thank you. And I helped plan the first London trip as a passion project or a launch project in 7th grade. And then March of last year, we got to go on the actual trip. There was a group of about 40 students who went, and they were between, at that time, freshmen and 8th graders. And it was really nice to get to meet new people and to grow with the people who went on the trip. I signed up with a group of friends, about like 8 people. But as we went on the trip, we got to meet tons of new people. All the kids who went with us, we got to grow closer to the chaperones and also meet some of the locals there, like our tour guide. It was a really nice experience. We created a lot of memories and got a lot of culture shocks. One is that people here in the Midwest are very friendly, and if you go somewhere else, they aren't as much. And another one, which you can see in the picture, is that they do serve like sparkling water there, and that tap water is not something that's very accessible in European countries. So overall, the trip for me was a great experience. It's an average vacation you love, or like a vacation you love being away from home. You don't have to go to school, do your household chores, but it was also an opportunity to see a different corner of the world. I wanted to travel outside the country since I was little, but my family wasn't in a financially stable place enough for us all to go. So this trip provided me the opportunity to go and do something that I love that I wouldn't have been able to without having a trip through the school. I also got to learn about a lot of new things. Prior to the trip, we got to do a lot of research on the history of London and tourist attractions and kind of pick and choose where we got to go, which was really neat. We got to see some big landmarks, Big Ben, London Eye, St. Paul's Cathedral, and it was a lot interesting to see how different life across the world can be. We were in a very touristy city, but just seeing how people that are there, local, living there, and how they get to see this every day was really interesting. Very different from Milwaukee with the old architecture, the red double-decker buses. It was just a really nice experience. It also taught me a lot of new life skills. We had to do a lot of fundraising and planning going up to this trip, especially because we were part of the Passion Project experience. So having to fundraise, was student-led fundraising, so students would get together and we would decide what fundraising projects we would want to do and try to plan dates for them, bring them to school advisory and the principals and stuff and try to get them planned. So that really taught you follow through, communication, taught you teamwork and work ethic and how you have to really set goals and the steps you need to take to get to reach those goals. And that really stayed with me outside of the trip too. Now it really set me up. In the fundraising process, my mom and I, she helped me support me by starting a business to sell like crafty things like blankets, home decor, jewelry. And we fundraised it up to the trip to try to meet that goal for us to help us pay for it. And I did meet the goal to pay for London, but I've continued that business now after London to try to have college funds and travel funds additionally because this trip really showed me my love for travel. In addition, this trip really opened up like new horizons for me. I knew that study abroad existed, but I never really considered it. And going home, I went and I looked into it, and it seemed really interesting. And it led our family chose to host an exchange student from France last summer, and she's coming back again this summer, which is really interesting because we get to see new people, meet new people. And then I plan to go to France and stay with her my summer of my junior or senior years, which is really nice. And also being able to see London and see all the different opportunities for me. I now originally planned to go to a 4-year college or just go right into college, but now I'm looking at study abroad programs and gap years and going to be a missionary in some European countries. So this trip has really affected me in my life by changing my future plans. I really can't imagine where I would be right now if I wasn't for this trip because it changed what I want to do in life, and I think it was a really great experience for me.
That's why we have a student come and talk about their experience, because none of us could do it quite as well as Rihanna, so that was perfect. So your next question might be, well, why expand? We went to London. You've heard Emily now talk about these last 2 years, 2 years now going to London. Why are you looking to potentially expand into more of the UK? Being able to get that cultural side, I mean, every single one of us who came, I mean, I'm sitting here in my London garb wearing my platform 9 3/4 sweatshirt, my Millwall shirt that we took when we went into the soccer match. I'm wearing my Shakespeare socks from the Globe Theater. I'm not going to show you those even though they look really creepy. But when you add in the Scotland piece, it just enhances and it makes you learn a little bit more of the countryside of all of the UK. So it's not just about a single city, but it's about, let's look at all of that. Let's look at the entire area, starting at the Edinburgh Castle, ending up in London, still being able to have the flexibility within the EF Travel organization to be able to say, yes, we want to do that. We want to maybe plan some different things. When we went this last spring break, we were able to create and say, hey, you know what? There's some student interest in maybe doing a Harry Potter tour. There's some student interest in watching a true European football match, and boy, was that intense. We were in the family section. It was not the family section of America, but it was intense, and it was really cool to be able to see a true, authentic experience in places that we cannot see while we are here in the United States and in Wisconsin. So looking to expand, looking to be able to do more of the countryside, to be able to travel, starting up in Edinburgh, being able to come down to London and just experience more of the UK. So that's kind of why we also did that. In addition, we have Owen here who is able, or wait.
Not quite yet, but we can jump in.
Not quite yet, yes. So Owen, this would be a great time for you to jump in and talk.
Okay, so I'm Owen Zemer. I'm a middle school student. I play the bagpipes, so this trip really is important to me since I am a bagpiper, as well as 4 other students here in the Pewaukee School District. This is a chanter. This is what people, when they first pick up the bagpipes, they get. Family-wise, I am Scottish, with my mom's side having a Scottish crest, which is like a symbol that is unique to only your family, as well as a tartan, which is a pattern or like color of your kilt, which is also unique to your family. These types of special opportunities as a middle school student impact me and all of my grade and peers, because I and many of my peers and friends have never traveled outside of the country since the United States is so large. And with that, we can experience a whole new world of culture, food, language, and even the nature that Scotland is. These experiences for me and my friends and peers will last for us for the rest of our lives, especially when we're a young adult. For example, if we get a job and we have to work and meet other coworkers that are from a different culture or country, we can learn how to respect their culture, and even in the doing so, learn more about their country and culture. This would be important since the U.S. is very diverse and big country, so really everywhere you go, you will either meet or greet someone who has a different country from you or culture. Me and others will gain from this experience from seeing the beauty and the historical importance of the countries, from just not seeing them from our phones, computers, reading about them in books, or maybe not even seeing them at all. Like in Scotland, there are many ways to express your culture, unlike the U.S. For example, you can see people, I bet if you go to Edinburgh, you'll be able to see a person walking in a tartan, or everywhere on the block you might see someone playing the bagpipes and drums. This is important since its rich history, architecture, geography, and unique culture will connect to the graduate profile section of Compete. Mostly Americans tend to not be as traveled as other countries, citizens from other countries, since the U.S. is just so big and large. So these experiences will help a ton with going to a new country that our middle school has never been to. And this, in the graduate profile, this would likely connect to the Connect section. Thank you for your time and consideration of this trip.
You know, you get bonus points when you say graduate profile in front of me.
We also talked about ethos, logos, pathos, and we are looking at creative writing. So Owen opted to do his persuasive letter, authentic learning. He wanted to write it to the school board on why we should go to Scotland. So I said, why don't you come actually tell them that? So this is actually part of what he chose to do. So thank you, Owen, that was awesome. So like Mr. Rail was saying, we would fly into Edinburgh. We would take a bus ride. We'd have our own private coach bus. We would travel down with one of the EF tour guides, similar to our trip last year. So they would be with us the duration of the trip. And this is someone who is a local, who lives in the area, is familiar with the area, and they would be sharing their country with us. We would drive down to Stratford-upon-Avon and see Shakespeare's birthplace. We'd also visit Oxford University. We'd have 3 nights in London, take a short drive over to Windsor Castle, so the royal home, and then we would head on back. So these are just some of the sites. So the first one is the Shakespeare's birthplace, Buckingham Palace, Edinburgh Castle, Piccadilly Circus. Some of those sites we've seen last year on our previous London trips, but some of these are new. And like Mr. Rail was saying as well, it's just getting that more broad sense of what the country has to offer instead of just one city. I used the example before when talking with Mr. Rail that you don't get an idea of the U.S. just by going to New York City. You get a glimpse of what one small, it's large, but a small portion of the U.S. is like. You need to see what life is like beyond the big metropolitan too. So just kind of a breakdown of our days. We would have 2 nights in Edinburgh, a stopover in Yorkshire for 1 night, and then we would continue over to Warwickshire and Stratford down to London for our departure. And again, we would be working with EF. This is an organization that I have known since 2002 when I went on my first EF trip as an 8th grader to London in my English class. So clearly had a slight impact because I'm still going and talking about it. But they emphasize everything that we talk about in the graduate profile. This graphic is directly from EF, and just quick glancing at some of those without even reading the bottom stuff, you can see the the parallels to what we value as well. And having gone with them now on a student trip, I can vouch for this is something they actually put into practice. It's not just their slogan on their pamphlet. There's a reason they are the #1 company and also used throughout our district. Kate Mitchell also uses EF, so this is just a history of our Pewaukee history with EF.
When you look at traveling through a travel organization, the things that I really appreciated, because for those who have been here for over a decade ago, I took we'll call it a ScotRail special trip to Washington, D.C. with a group of students, and it was a phenomenal trip. It was something that we completely planned on our own, which was a lot of work. So when you look at that, I mean, in that trip, we met with all three of our Congress people. We were able to meet with a representative from the Department of Education. We went to the Holocaust Museum. We saw the Capitol. We got into the White House. We got into all these different things. And the benefit of going through a travel organization like EF is because, number one, they have some ins. They have a lot of different connections. They are local. Claire, our tour guide last year, was phenomenal. Not only her accent, but also just being able to speak and to be able to describe it as the locals would. So being able to see it and to get the extra connections of being you pay for the travel service through EF, and then they are able to get you into different places as well. We were able to basically skip the huge long line going into the London Eye because we were an EF travel group. So we could basically just walk to the front of the line, go up, do the thing, and then it allowed for us to be able to do more in London because we didn't have to wait 3 hours in line for the London Eye. So, I mean, this EF travel organization is a great tool to be able to help us see more and to be able to connect with the locals.
And we are fortunate enough, we have Claire again for our 2025 trip that we're taking. So we've learned from things that we loved last year, but we've also said, hey, well, can we add this in? And she's been great to work with. Already planted the seed. She said she would love to take us to Scotland as well. So if we want to, that's an option. Proposal dates. So the way EF works is you give them a travel window. So we have given them the proposal or the proposed dates of spring break 2027. And once those are finalized, we can narrow down our specific travel window. That particular year, Easter falls on that Sunday right at the end of spring break. So our goal would be to try to be back that Saturday prior to Easter, just to be in respect of people's family functions and religious things going on. If that were to not align with the travel window, our primary goal is to not be coming back on Easter. So that's something we're looking at and aware of as we continue in conversations. Flights and transportation, we have done for our last year's trip as well as for this one coming up in March. We will depart from Pewaukee District on a coach bus. We will drive together down to O'Hare. If you've ever flown out of O'Hare, you know how fun parking can be. So trying to do that for 50-some families gets to be a lot. So we will take everybody, do our goodbyes here. We would fly into Edinburgh. We'd have our coach bus, like I said, and then while we were over there, once we're actually in London, we would travel via the Tube and the famous double-decker buses. And then fly out of Heathrow on the way home back to Chicago, and then take the coach bus from O'Hare to Pewaukee. Cost-wise, we are looking at $3,829 per student. EF is fabulous, like we said, but they also have payment plans, which is really great. And part of why we try to propose these trips 2 years out is to try to make them as affordable and reasonable for as many families as possible. So included in this price is round-trip airfare, hotels, 2 meals per day. We did intentionally select with Claire meals that were different from what we are used to. So we did not go just sit at McDonald's. We had Lebanese one night. We had authentic Chinese one night. Things that were very unique to us. And some kids loved, and some kids really loved going to the grocery store and buying snacks after dinner. But that's an option they have, and you're still getting that local experience of what's a British grocery store look like. Let's go find out. So all of those things are included as well. And then scholarship opportunities. So I would like to, if this is approved, have an enrollment meeting or an info meeting next week. I know that's a quick turnaround, but EF has an opportunity right now that any students who enroll in the month of January, if 6 students enroll, I will be granted a $1,000 applicable scholarship that I can apply to any students that are enrolled under that window. So Mr. Rail and I are still talking about what that would look like in terms of an application process, but some sort of opportunity, if it helps students, we would like to make that feasible for kids. There's also a global citizenship scholarship where you record a video and talk about the impact that you're hoping for through this trip. Students can apply for that. And then Rihanna mentioned before the fundraising opportunities. So that list there, that largest number next to each bullet point, is the actual amount that students have earned through the fundraisers that we've done. So we've had students earn $400 on a couple different fundraisers. So over the course of those 2 years, they can actually make a pretty big dent in this. And then with those, it's not just me and Mr. Rail planning these. It's, all right, group, let's get together on our extended learning days. The London crew is meeting. Let's look at who are we going to contact? What's our next venture? We sold bracelets at the football game, so who's going to email Mr. Behrens to get approval on this and those sorts of things. So there's some work on them too. Like Lisa was talking about before, we try to be the guide on the side through this. We want to facilitate travel. I'm not your tour guide. I'm not doing this. We're helping you make this happen.
In addition to looking at the cost, I mean, looking at the numbers that we've had over the course of the last couple of years on our London trips, we have intentionally looked at 2 years out from now. I know when Emily and I first started talking, we kind of debated and talked about spring break of 2026, but then the decision was made to go with the spring break of 2027, not only to afford parents an opportunity to be able to do the parent plan or the payment plan to make it more affordable, but also looking at the number of students who have come. We have found that a lot of times the subset of 8th grade and 9th grade is a very good age to be able to go for a couple different reasons. Number one, it allows for every single traveler to go to have basically gone through all but potentially the last 2 months of their middle school career. So all of us who are going on the trip, the chaperones, we've all had the opportunity to be able to see them. In addition, having the 9th graders coming in, there's that level of sense of maturity, which is awesome because it's a great connection into PHS as well. We have some 8th graders who went on the trip last year. When they came over into high school, they felt less nervous because they just took a trip to London with a bunch of freshmen who are already at the high school. So they felt connected with people who are already there. And then their friends felt connected because of just the interconnectedness of those who are able to travel. So we feel as though that 8th and 9th grade on the travel trip, that would be kind of like the sweet spot. So for this proposal, we are looking to offer it to the current 6th graders and the current 7th graders when they are 8th grade and 9th grade. So that's kind of where we are looking. You can see that we have had very good numbers. Emily talked about the travel window, and EF is able to select the dates. We tend to be, we get a better likelihood of getting our preferred travel dates if we have a full crew going. Those are both full crews. So that would hopefully, if we are able to get a full crew again, having to wait those 2 years, then we would be able to get our preferred travel days, because the travel days all are based off of whether you can fill a bus. And if you can't fill a bus, then they merge you with another group. So whether or not those travel days all align is why there's that travel window. So we want to try and get as much as we can and to be able to fill our bus so that we can dictate exactly when we go as much as possible.
And I started off by saying I went on a trip when I was in 8th grade. I have now been to, I think, 8 or 9 countries. My own kids are 3 and 5 and have more passport stamps than I did by the time I was 20. But one door opening, that door opened for me when I was in 8th grade, and it's been swung wide open ever since. And I'm hoping to do that for other kids as well. I think Rihanna shared a little bit about how it's impacted her. Owen's already excited to go, so I'm hoping that we can continue our travel program. When I first pitched the first trip a couple years ago, I remember Mr. Dukes said, well, how long are you going to run these trips? What's your goal? How long? And I said, if you approve it, I will run them until I retire, and I'd like to stick by that. I think it's a great opportunity, and it's one that I hope my own kids have someday too. So thank you for your consideration.
Any questions?
I have a question, and this is kind of more targeted to you, Emily. What are you getting out of this, and why are you so passionate about doing it?
Honestly, it's really hard because I leave my kids for a week, and they're small. I have a PLE-er right now who's in kindergarten, and Mom, I want to go to London. Well, sorry, you're not coming on this one. There are perks through leaving trips. You get benefits. I went on a training tour, so EF actually pays for you to go experience what it's like to be an EF traveler. You get to go see how EF works. You get to ask all the questions surrounded by EF staff. So that was an opportunity I had that was really helpful, but that was prior to my last London trip, so that does that prepared me better for that one. Honestly, this girl did a lot of it. I remember walking to the top of St. Paul's Cathedral, and she was right in front of me, and I could hear her gasping when we got to the top of like how beautiful it was, and immediately it was, I need to call my mom. My mom needs to see this. Hang on. And within minutes, everybody was FaceTiming their parent back home, ignoring completely the time difference that 8 hours has. But just literally, I have goosebumps right now. But like watching them realize that they can do something and they can go out and they can do this, and then wanting to share it back home, it was very powerful and continues to be. And we'd love for any of you to come chaperone and see it yourself. It's contagious. It really is. Mr. Rail, I remember on the bus, I told him I wasn't going to say this, but
You can say it, you're fine.
I remember on the bus, he was very emotional leaving Pewaukee saying, I'm going to miss my family. This is going to be so hard. And coming back from O'Hare after a week with these teenage kids abroad for a week, said, I'm excited to see my family. And they need to get passports because we have to do this. So like the family part remains, but just that travel bug, it's something that it hits you and you realize how big the world is. And I think that's what we try to do in our district and make learning authentic. And I think this is one opportunity for kids. And I think we have a lot of opportunities at the high school as well. Our goal is we want to try to give those opportunities to kids that maybe won't take a language class or won't be in advanced classes to have those opportunities. That's why we go England, we go English speaking good entry level countries for those.
I'm going to answer the question in a side way. The reason why Emily does this is the same reason why so many of us as educators get into education. We go into education because we have a passion to make a difference with kids. That's one of the big reasons why we go into education. Emily went into education for that reason, but she also does this travel because of the passion. Going through this experience with her over the course of last year, I was able to see a firsthand account of the passion and the incredible, impressive nature of who she is and the dedication and the desire and the willingness to truly serve, to truly do what's best for kids. This opportunity for the kids who went, she did it and she was able to open the door to so many kids and to be able to have that desire and to be able to share her love and passion for education. There is absolutely no surprise in who I am and knowing why she does this. It's because it's just in her blood, and it's impressive. So she won't say it because she's humble, but I will.
Thank you. This was a really good presentation. I like the numbers in there and how committed you guys have got all the figures, all the numbers and everything pretty much figured out for your trip, so.
A little disappointed you didn't do it in like a Scottish-British accent throughout the
I
presentation.
can't. I can try, but my kids tell me that I'm terrible at it.
By the end of the week, it really does, it starts to pick
sinking
up.
in,
Yes,
doesn't it?
you'd be
Okay.
surprised on the bus home.
Yeah, if there are no other questions, I'm just curious, maybe one of these future trips, you could also go to Ireland?
We
Just
could.
saying.
I've been there. I don't know if I want to take kids to certain parts I've been.
The pubs, you know, whatever.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Yes, I move to approve the field trip request for students to travel to Europe and London in 2027 over the spring break period, hopefully.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You did a phenomenal job presenting. I don't know if we're a scary group, but I would imagine it was somewhat intimidating, and you did awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I know we have bagpipers. I didn't know we had bagpipers.
Five? Did you say five?
4 of them, wow.
All right, we're gonna have to take advantage of that.
All right, next we're gonna look at the shared services agreement for the Woodland Conference. That's 13 schools, of which we're part of. Mike? you wanna address
Yeah,
that?
this is an annual piece of, we're members of the Woodland Conference. This is a 660301 agreement, which requires board action. As a member of the Woodland Conference, there's an annual per member school cost of $4,282. So there's information included in your packet, including kind of how that budget looks. So would be seeking your approval of this kind of annual commitment to the Woodland Conference.
Does anyone have any questions? Comments? All right then, I'll take a motion.
Do we have one written? I don't see one.
We don't.
I can wing it. I move to approve the participation in the shared services agreement for the Woodland Conference Athletic Conference. Did I do okay, you think?
Thanks, that's fine.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Moving on, next, we'd like to discuss the special education caseload, consideration and discussion of open enrollment seat designations for
Yeah.
the 25-26 school year.
I'm going to invite Tony down. Did a good job putting the information together for you contained in his memorandum. This is important information for the board to have prior to establishing, taking action and deciding on open enrollment seats for next year. Tony.
Good evening, everybody. We put a lot of work into the open enrollment and overall staffing for special education. We have seen significant growth over the last couple of years, and we tried to capture that in this report this evening. So this takes in our current number of students. We take into consideration students that are referred, and we also look at class sizes as well as number of students per grade level and number of students in a building. And after we process all of that, we then look at caseloads, we look at comparables through CISA 1 region, and that's how we derive where we would like our caseloads to be. Now, because we're growing, there have been some challenges with unanticipated students showing up over the summer term. Pewaukee School District is a destination district. A lot of parents are seeking us out. I facilitate a number of tours. A lot of families that are relocating are specifically seeking out the Pewaukee School District because of the quality programs as well as the high caliber of staff that we have. On the second page, we talk about case weights. And case weights are determined based on the number of hours that students are serviced in special education. We look specifically at the program summary where we have special education minutes. We also have supplementary aids and services, which are accommodations that oftentimes require some adult assistance and support. So the case weight, the reason that we emphasize that is, one, it promotes balance within departments as it pertains to teachers that have special education kids that might be more significant one-on-one aids. There's additional planning, so we want to be very cognizant of the workload. Now, one of the most interesting things of this report, well, maybe for me, I don't know for you guys, but would be the table in the center. If you take a look at this, the referrals, and what we did was we gave you a 3-year average. So when we take a look, since we're growing, we take a look at the number of referrals that we have throughout the course of a school year. We went back specifically for 3 years, and as you can see in that middle table, for 2022-23, the total number of referrals were 88, students who did not qualify were 35, students that were placed were 47, and then no consent. And what no consent means is if a student qualifies for special education, the parents still have to sign consent. So we never know if a parent's going to sign consent, but I just wanted to outline the table because one of the things that we have to factor in for open enrollment is potential referrals, potential students that are going to qualify. We are very fortunate in the Pewaukee School District to have a robust MTSS, the former RTI system, where kids go through 2 tiers, Tier 2 and Tier 3, when they need additional support for math, reading, or writing. So we have an idea, and we meet with the psychs. I have all the department chairs that I share this information with, and then I meet with each department monthly just to get a really good sense of where we're currently at and what are we anticipating for the upcoming school year. So the table on the bottom of this, figure 1.1, is PLE. And what you can see is the growth rate, and you got to look at it diagonally. So case in point, early childhood, current caseload 6, projected next year is 9. So it's a little confusing when you initially look at it. We also incorporated the case weights. And we did this for every grade level in every building so that we could get a true sense of exactly where we're at. So as you can see, PLE and looking at the comparables in the region, we're looking at caseloads between 8 and 10 would be ideal at an elementary. Does that mean that every caseload is between 8 and 10? No, there are times where caseloads are 11 or 12. It does happen, but we try to do the best job that we can to account for our referrals as we plan our staffing for the 25-26 school year. So elementary caseloads, I talked about the 8 to 10. My recommendation for PLE after looking at the numbers, looking at the referral rates, is to close all seats for open enrollment at early childhood, K4, kindergarten, first and second grade. Any questions on Pewaukee Lake Elementary, and I'll move on to Horizon. Okay. So then for Horizon, we're taking a look, again, 8 to 10 students. We're looking at 9 students per caseload. As a result, my recommendation here is to close special education seats for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. And the reason for that is, after looking at the referrals, our elementary schools have the greatest incident rate of new referrals. Usually when students make it to the secondary level, we have a significantly smaller number of referrals. So my recommendation for Horizon, grades 3, 4, and 5 cross-categorical special education programs, is to close all seats. Then if we take a look at Asa Clark Middle School, caseloads are typically staffed at 10 to 12 students per caseload. Asa Clark will start the year at 11 and 12 students, depending upon the caseload. My recommendation is to close open enrollment seats, cross-categorical special education, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. Now, Pewaukee High School is the one building in the district that does programming slightly different. And the unique component of Pewaukee High School is that when a case manager takes students in the 9th grade, they carry those students throughout the course of the 4 years at the high school. Parents really like it. Kids get very familiar with the case manager. But for high school caseloads, we like to keep them at 14. That's pretty much consensus. There's a range for high schools in the region. The high is 21. We don't want to be at the high. But typical, if you asked any special education teacher, they'd say between 13 and 15 is a really good caseload. We strive for 14 because we are seeing some referrals at the middle and the high school due to anxiety and other related challenges that kids may encounter. ADHD is another common one where we see some referrals. And we do have some kids qualifying for special education. We've also seen some move-ins over the previous number of years due to a lot of parents really excited about the work that our high school is doing. It's a very sought-after program. So my recommendation after looking at our numbers and the staffing is to close all seats cross-categorical special ed grades 9, 10, 11, and 12th grades. In addition to that, our 18 to 21 program is a unique program. It's at WCTC. We're currently looking at caseloads of 6. However, that teacher also handles outplaced students. We have a number of students that are outplaced at different sites because their IEP, their needs exceed what we can offer here in the Pewaukee School District. So she also case manages those students and handles DVR. My recommendation is to close seats in our 18 to 21 program at the high school as well. Now, speech and language is an area that we've seen some growth. And when you look at the charts here, we do have some caseloads that are a little bit bigger. When we take a look at speech and language, we have therapists. Because we're all on one site, we can share therapists between buildings. And what I do and how I figure it out, you might raise the question, Anthony, some of these caseloads are a lot higher than 36. You are correct. Those caseloads have a mixture of consult, which is a little bit less. So it's not, numbers don't always tell the whole story. But for our caseloads here in the Pewaukee School District, we would like to see them between 30 and 40. There are instances where we exceed that. and high in the region would be 60. So at this time, my recommendation, because of our growth in speech and language and the number of referrals that we are currently processing and that we're anticipating, my recommendation is to close all seats for speech and language due to where our current caseloads are and the anticipated number of 36, recognizing that we're going to see a significant number of referrals during the 25-26 school year. It has been trending upward since COVID. We're hoping that that'll stabilize, and really appreciated the school districts and the support to increase our speech paths over the last number of years because of the growth. Does anyone have any questions or any specifics that you would like me to dig into?
It was very thorough, Anthony, thank you.
And I guess one thing that I would like to highlight, and I showed Dr. Katie this today, 2017-18, we were at 208 special education kids, including speech and language in the district. As of our October count this year, we're at 354. And the principals have been outstanding in meeting with me. We start meetings in December. We meet through the month of January. And I met with Brian Siegel last year. I think we met 6 or 7 times coming up with our staffing plan for this school year. And I sat down with him this year, and he's like, you know, we didn't anticipate those 7 new kids at this grade level. They're the 3 new kids at that grade level. I guess the good news is people are really excited about coming to the Pewaukee School District. The staff has done a phenomenal job in servicing kids, but there are just some unexpected things that we can't anticipate no matter what budget or how much time we spend on the budget. But I do appreciate the ongoing support from senior leaders in this school board and how much you care for each and every student in this district. Thank you for that.
Tony, before you leave?
Yeah.
Could you, I think you said 30, give me the numbers again, 209 to 355 to 359?
I'll do one better. I'll give you the chart.
Well,
You can see the numbers.
yeah, I wanted to know what's the, you can have this. Thank you. What's behind that?
Well,
That's almost a, what, 200% increase?
so when I started in 2013, we were about 176. 2014, we carried out full inclusion. CISA 1 and the directors that work at CISA 1 hear from parents all the time. They survey parents, they do parent nights. The feeling in the area is that we do inclusion better than any other district in southeastern and Wisconsin and Waukesha. We've had multiple tours of other schools wanting to see the work. Our paraprofessionals are really strong. Our teachers are amazing. The grade-specific model, a lot of districts do looping and resource pullout. And what that means is they don't have a special ed teacher paired with a regular ed teacher in the same space serving kids. The model is what is luring parents here, because if you have a student with some social emotional challenges or communication, the authentic learning opportunities that present themselves in an inclusive environment you can't replicate anywhere, and the commitment of resources as well as the infrastructure of our rooms where we have adjoining classrooms. Parents are impressed, the kids are thriving. Our survey data, 96% approval rating with 25+% of our families responding. And a lot of these parents are on social media blogs. They talk to each other. Many of the families for corporate relocations, people doing jobs, they reach out to people in the area. Who does this really well? Pewaukee's in the top 3 of the school districts that I'm hearing does inclusion and special education better than anything else. And the parents have been really satisfied, and your parents and your children are your best advertisers for your school district.
I think that's one of the things. It's like I don't think we want to be known for being the worst school district in terms of special education, and the fact that we are recognized as a top school district, that's what drives people to bring their kids here and come through and buy a house. They're residents of the school district. So, I mean, they feel that their kids are getting good services here. And, you know, I think that's one of those, like, okay, it's what happens out there, right? So.
No, you guys, the work that you do around these tables and the support for the district is just unbelievable, and the parents recognize it.
Just to add a little perspective, we are below the state average in percent of kids that are special education in the district. So I think that's just something, just to give you a full picture. I think currently we're showing 12% special education state average. Last year's was 15.3%. Special education is going up across the state as well in terms of referrals. That's been a little bit of a trend since COVID as well. So I just wanted to add that piece to the overall picture.
To go along with that, I know that you do county comparables. How do our numbers compared to other districts around us, say Arrowhead, Oconomowoc, Kettle Moraine?
It's a great question. We fall right in the middle. We're not at the top for caseloads. We're not at the bottom. And some of our caseloads are closer to the lower end. It just depends on the grade level and the number of students that we have. But overall, if we're looking at caseloads, we're looking at staffing, we fall right in the middle, just slightly below the middle range.
Yeah, and we can give you some specific detail on that on the 21st as well, some comparables. I think that'd be helpful.
Awesome. Any other questions for Anthony? All right. Thank you so much for all your work on that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Anthony.
Tony.
Ready for the motion?
No.
That goes in the next one.
Oh, that goes in the next one. Oh, sorry.
Right. Next, we're going to discuss the open enrollment seat designations for the 25-26 school year. And I think Mike and John, you're going to speak.
Turn it over to
this.
John.
So as we discussed in the budget development, open enrollment becomes a key piece in our student population and the efficiency of how we operate in the district. Open enrollment is a tool that we have to optimize the efficiency of every classroom or the structure within our buildings. So as we look at open enrollment seats, the process starts by doing a enrollment projection for the fall. Cast forward who we have now, look at the ratios of who is likely to return or families to move in, and how do we have optimal class sizes with that. So we'll open seats in open enrollment to be able to get those classes to a target range of where we're at. We don't set a specific target for a grade level, but we always look at that range plus or minus 1 or 2 of what is going to allow us to have all of our classrooms at each grade level optimized as efficient as they can. This especially plays in when you look at encore classes, the specials in that. At Pewaukee Lake Elementary, that schedule works the best when we have 8 or 9 sections at each grade level. So when we look at incoming students, and the recommendation this year is a majority, again, of the seats that we have available in open enrollment to be at Pewaukee Lake Elementary, having 8 sections of 4-year-old kindergarten gives us the best opportunity to optimize that staff for all of the specials, all of the regular classrooms that we have within the building. Last year, we opened 10 seats, and our resident population was smaller. As we got closer to the year, the board acted to add another 10 seats into that grade level for 20. This year, we're recommending at 4K to come out of the gate with 20, with 20 students accepted into the 4K. We'll generally get about 50 applications for students to enter in 4K. We also want to get the students in as early as possible into our programming, through our 4K programming, to have the best chance for success as they proceed through the grade levels. Kindergarten, we're also recommending opening 5 seats there. Kindergarten is one where it's right on that cusp. Is there an extra section or not? Do we have the opportunity with the number of seats to be able to maintain the level of sections and keep that optimal operations for the building at 9 sections in that grade level moving forward? The next grade level is 2nd grade. The situation is the same there. We had a large class go out. We've got a smaller class coming into 2nd grade. Having some additional seats there allow us to maintain that number of sections and still have that optimal number of students in each classroom in 2nd grade. So we're recommending 8 students in 2nd grade. After that, looking at the classrooms, we're operating with the resident students and the current open enrollment students continuing at about that, the right level, all the way until we get to grade 4 and grade 5, where we're recommending opening 2 seats at each grade level, so pretty minimal. Big picture, when you look at it, districts across the state, and especially in this region, declining enrollment is very common. Across the state, it's close to 80% of districts are in declining enrollments, meaning that 3-year average over 3-year average, it's smaller currently, so it's trending downward. As we look at that declining enrollment, if we decline by 1%, it has a significant impact on our revenue limit and the revenue we can generate, but that's 26 students over 14 grade levels. So the difference of 1 or 2 students per grade level is not going to allow you to drop your cost. And it's the concept is districts don't shrink well. So as you decline in enrollment, you take 26 students over 14 grades, that's less than 2 students per grade level. That's not going to allow you to reduce a section. So if we can use open enrollment to fill the valves of those smaller classes to keep that revenue stream where it is, it allows us to do some additional programming, like some of the insight stuff that you heard at the high school as we talked earlier tonight. The numbers that I gave you for those grade levels, that totals 37 students. That's pretty consistent with where we've been in previous years for the number of seats that we have open in open enrollment. As an administrative team, we always look to keep the number of open enrollment seats, number of students at each grade level in open enrollment, somewhere around that 12 to 15% range max. We don't want to become too reliant on the program. We want to be able to manage the class sizes so it's not driving cost. So having that 12 to 15% range as kind of a benchmark to target helps us to move forward. Timeline-wise, open enrollment, we open these seats as of the board action to open these seats. Any grade level where we do not have a designation of seat availability becomes closed to any applications for this enrollment period, but also for anybody who wants to file an alternative application to come and attend the district all the way through the 3rd Friday in September. We finalize these application period ends on April 30th. We will do the selection. If we have more requests for a grade level than what seats were available, that's a random draw that we fill the seats with. The board then accepts those applications, typically the first meeting in June. Parents then have to acknowledge that they're going to take the seat that's been offered to them. And if they don't within the time window that's allotted, it is awarded to the next person on the waiting list until we fill all the seats. So in your packet, you have the recommendation with the grade levels. At the same time, the first motion is for the seats to open. The second motion relates to the seats that are going to be closed, as Mr. Stranke walked through before. And then the third motion that you have, the board has 2 provisions in their policy for open enrollment. Students who are currently in attendance. So when we make this projection, we look at the number of kids who are sitting in a seat in December. We project who's going to be here in the spring. If there's a student who is occupying a seat but may have moved to another district and is staying here on a tuition waiver, they do not have to have a seat available to enter the district for open enrollment for the following year. The second provision deals with siblings of currently attending students. So students who occupy a seat that their sibling may want to come here, they have preference over anybody else to get in, but there has to be a seat available at that grade level for the sibling to be able to come in. So that's the third motion. Any questions?
Maybe just a teeny one, John. In the past, I always thought we had used the term closed, but this year we're using no open enrollments.
Correct. Yeah. Based on a recommendation when reviewing this with our legal counsel, that was their recommendation for the motion.
Any other questions?
John, do you know what the numbers are of current percentage of open enrollment students, number-wise?
In the memo, I outlined the numbers that are currently per building. So we generally average between 24 and 26 students per building, per grade level.
But you're looking for a total, right?
Total incoming students, we have 349. Last Friday was the second Friday count. So there's 2 days in the year that we count and certify the number of kids with the state. Friday the 10th was the count date for January. We'll have that count finalized and reported to the board at the next meeting to establish where we're at compare. But it was 349 students in September who were in attendance.
And out of 2,000 and
2,926, I believe.
John, relative to the vote, action 3, is it the case that we've always done that? We have to have a seat available for siblings? Or is this a change?
That has been in place 3 or 4 years. That's been in policy.
What was it prior?
I think we've always haven't we always prioritized siblings? If there's open seats, they get first.
Yeah, siblings have always been priority as long back as I can remember.
That's not my question. My question is, you're talking about, you're saying they have priority, and my question is, has that always been just priority and never been, they can come
Correct.
because they're a sibling without any strings?
There's
Okay.
got to be a seat open.
There has to be a seat for siblings.
Yeah, so if the board, let's say, I have a fourth grader that was accepted in open enrollment, and I also applied for a second grader, but there were no seats available at second grade. That second grader is not able to come here. It's only if the board opens seats, and then if you're a sibling, you get priority. But if there's 2 seats, but there's 4 kids that have applied who are all siblings, and it's a random draw, those 4 would be randomly drawn before anybody else. So that's how it's been done.
Does that come back to the board? So if you have the situation you exactly described, is the board aware that
Yes, you
this is
receive that.
occurring and we have no option to open the seats case by case?
That siblings don't get in, is the board informed of that?
Correct.
It comes in the memo in June. When you get the memo in June, you'll get the results of the application period and how many applications we received at each grade level, how many applications of that pool were siblings of currently attending students, and how many were accepted to open seats, or how many were waitlisted or denied based on not having seat available.
So at that point, so that's already at the end, so at that point, it could come back to the board and seats could be opened or not?
Well, like they did for 4K last year. Yeah, the board could open additional seats.
Got it, thank you.
Yep.
Good question.
That is a good question.
Any other questions? All right.
She's ready to go.
Are you ready to go, Stacy?
Sure. I move to declare a total of 37 open enrollment seats available at the following grade levels for the 2025-26 school year. 4K, 20 seats. Grade kindergarten, 5 seats. Grade 2, 8 seats. Grade 4, 2 seats. Grade 5, 2 seats. Do you want me to do a motion we should do a motion by motion, right?
Yeah, one at a time.
Yep.
Yep.
You need a second for that.
I need a second. Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Motion 2, I'll take this one. We move to close the following programs due to lack of space. Preschool phonology, early childhood, speech and language, grades, early childhood through 12, specific learning disabilities program K through 12, emotional behavior disabilities programs K through 12, intellectually disabled K through 12, blind and visually impaired K through 12, and deaf and hard of hearing K through 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Larry, you want to take the next one?
Just a quick question. What are the number of students in that last category, Bren, the blind and deaf, that we currently take?
Do we know, Anthony?
Do you know, I don't think we have any blind students. I think we have some hearing impaired students.
We have vision and hearing itinerant, and it's a very small number. It usually ranges between 4 and 7 students annually.
Okay.
Thank you.
This one. I read, this is, my sheet that, it's the,
Right, that's different than ours.
is it? You're right.
What sheet is?
So which sheet is correct?
This is the correct motion.
No seats.
Oops. I thought maybe you had a correction that you weren't.
No, see, I was using, yeah.
So speech and language.
So it is different. Wow. I don't know. Yeah, it's copied out of here.
So do you want to revise your motion?
So I will revise my motion. To move to approve no open enrollment seats in the following special education programs and services. Speech and language, grades K4 through 2nd, early childhood, 3-year-olds, cross-categorical special education, grades K4 through 2nd, speech and language, grades 3 through 5, cross-categorical special education, grades 3 through 5, speech and language, 6th through 8th, cross-categorical special education, grades 6th through 8th, speech and language, 9th through 12th, and cross-categorical special education, grades 9 through 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Then how do we, because we approved the previous thing that you stated though, right? So we have to.
I don't think, did you?
There was a motion.
You didn't,
A
I don't
second.
think there was a second or a vote on that previous one. I didn't hear
No,
any.
because I think you caught it after I.
Yeah, there was some discussion before, I don't think there was a second even for that one.
All right. Motion 3, who wants to take that one?
I'll do it. The Board of Education will accept full-time open enrollment applications of students in the upcoming application period who are currently included in the count of occupied spaces in attending Pewaukee School District. The Board of Education will apply the preferences required by law to full-time open enrollment applications of siblings of students who are currently enrolled and included in the count of occupied spaces and are attending the Pewaukee School District at any grade where open enrollment space is available. I move. to do that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Same.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. All right, so moving along to personnel issues, we have no resignations, no retirements, but we do have one employment at this time.
Yeah, we have one employment. This is a limited term contract. I just want to pull it up here real quick. Adam Yates, real quick story. This is, I think, a success of a creative approach. Colin Jacobs worked with the high school on this. We had a technical education teaching position this year. Those are very difficult to fill. After working to fill that, being unsuccessful in recruiting a qualified candidate, went the route of an internship. An internship is it's student teaching, but it's in a different category. There's an amount of a payment there. A student teacher, in essence, working under an internship has some independence, receives a certain amount of pay for that. Then we had some teachers take overloads first semester. So, and so the plan there was to see how did our teacher do and perform, and he performed well, and he graduated at semester. So now we're looking to bring him in on a limited term contract for the spring. So a good situation there for Mr. Yates. That's worked out well in helping us fill a difficult to fill position. So I would seek your approval of the limited term contract for semester 2 for Adam Yates, technical education, Asa Clark, and Pewaukee High School.
Move to approve the hiring of Adam Yates for the limited term tech ed teacher role.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
All right, next we'll move on to board goals and operations. Upcoming activities. This coming Tuesday, on the 21st, is our learning session regarding student services and mental health. We'll have Tony Stranke, Adriana Plack, Brian Siegel, Dan Duss, Nellie Bailey, and attorney Renee Aldana that will be present to participate in that session and really just fulfill one of our board goals, to really learn more about student services, really to get a better grasp on IEPs, 504s, and just understand the legalities around it. Mike, is there anything you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
only correction, and that was my mistake. Nellie won't be in attendance, but we will have Dan Deuce, so.
Okay.
So we have a school psychologist. Our school psychs play a really important role in the process, and so Dan will be there representing the psychs, but I erred when I included that Nellie was going to be there, so.
Wait, and it is Tuesday, right? Because it's in board docs. It's listed as.
Correct.
Yes, yes. Starts at
That's
6
Tuesday,
PM.
21st, yeah.
And if you could RSVP to Tammy so she can appropriately figure out the food for everyone.
Before you go on, in full disclosure on this one, so I go to basketball games and I was sitting next to, actually Amanda Sorkness, her son and the guy that I was sitting next to, his daughter plays hockey. But anyway, his name is Jake Gould or
Gould.
something. He was very active, involved in special education here. He has a daughter who's actually in the 18 to 21 at WCTC. I said, oh, we have this meeting coming up. And he said, I want to be there, I want to be there, I want to be there. I was like, okay. So anyway, if he shows up, I'll take full responsibility for it because it's an open meeting. And I think he has a lot of good points to make. And I was very impressed with his knowledge of the programs here, but more importantly, his fact that his daughter is in the 18 to 21 program and she works at Quick Trip, which I didn't know Quick Trip had a specialized program for students that might have some disabilities and be able to work in it. So yes, indeed, that's a shameless plug for Quick Trip. But I think the more that we can learn from people who have experienced the program might be helpful. So if you guys have any concerns with
So
that.
did she grow up through the district? She came through the,
I don't really know. Anthony would probably know all
Yeah.
the details on it, but.
okay.
And Jake was, led our parent advocacy group, for, it's no longer functioning. But Jake was very involved, so, yeah,
Okay.
throughout.
So if he's sitting in, it's me, okay, so Mike and Anthony, those guys didn't invite him in, which is like, okay, but,
Is it here?
what's that?
It's in the district boardroom.
21st, yeah.
Yep, on the 21st, yep. Yeah, the goal of that is, so we're finalizing details on kind of the presentation, and just trying to really provide education around the law. You know, you're gonna hear about things like, FAPE, which is free and appropriate public education, delivered in the least restrictive environment, or LRE. IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, so you get a sense of the context of what does the law require, what is the difference between an IEP, a 504, and other needs that are addressed just through multi-tiered systems of support, which is what we refer to as MTSS. So I'll learn about those. You heard a lot tonight about referrals. How does a referral work? How does an evaluation work? How does an IEP team work? The inclusion model how do we determine those sections? How are kids assigned? We have some data from Candace. There was some request about data. How have kids performed regular ed as well, who have been in those inclusion sections. So we have a number of things. It's fairly ambitious, but it can also go whatever direction the board wants to take it. So if there's something that is of more interest than others, we will have very confident in the expertise in the room. Renee Aldana is one of the top, premier special education attorneys in the state of Wisconsin. I'm sure there's nothing legal that she couldn't answer for you. So we're looking forward to that evening.
So probably in light of my comment, we need to make sure they have citizen comments at the meeting on Tuesday, so.
Yes.
Wonderful. So I hope everyone can attend. I think this education is very important for all of us. It's a busy week next week. On top of the learning session starting out the week, the WASB conference is Wednesday through Friday of next week. Stacy, Matt, Larry, and myself are the board members that are registered to attend. Thank you guys so much for coming. I always say I learned so much listening in on those sessions. And we actually have a presentation of our own that's on Friday from 1:45 to 2:45 regarding AI in the school
I think
district.
it's on Thursday.
It's Thursday.
Is that Thursday?
yeah.
Okay. And that's Mike, Anthony, Rachel, and Larry that are presenting that. Monday, February 10th, we start with the business affairs at 6 and a board meeting at 7. Then, on the 17th, was a learning session, but we've really turned it into a board retreat. We're gonna start out the evening by going through, our board survey and looking at those results and discussing those results. But then, as we get into the evening, we really just, wanna spend some time working on cohesion and the relationships between the board, Mike, administration. Maybe you wanna?
Yeah, if there's, so we're gonna try to organize a structure in essence for you as a board, to work together in terms of how you want to function most effectively, and any way in which the administrative team can work with you and serve you in the most effective manner. I did distribute books. Everybody received a copy of The Speed of Trust by Covey. I think that's a text that can be helpful. We use it for our administrative team. That's what our norms are in terms of how we operate. So the board identifying norms of how you want to function as a group is a potential outcome of that evening. If there's other outcomes that any of you think are really critical that you want to get out of this time that you have together, please, if you want to let me know, let Bren know. I can really try to make sure that we structure the evening to get to the outcomes that you would hope to have that night. So. Where's that held?
In the administrative office.
Yep, district
Conference
office.
room.
Yep.
Awesome. Monday, February 24th, is the next board meeting, 6 PM policy committee meeting, followed by a 7 PM board meeting. Monday, March 10th, is business affairs at 6, followed by a board meeting at 7. Then Monday, April 14th, is the oath of office for new board members, followed by business affairs at 6, board meeting at 7, and then Monday, April 28th, 6 PM policy committee, 7 PM board meeting. All right. Next, is the SWSA and legislative updates.
Yeah, so that's gonna start to heat up. I'm gonna be reaching out, maybe this week to Representative Nalen and Senator Hutton, see if we can get on their, calendars. Now that we've flipped to, the new year, that biennium budget bill in particular is gonna get a ton of attention. I included in your packets, good night and good luck on your finals.
Yes, good luck, girls.
Thank you.
I'm sure you two probably don't need it, but best wishes on
Well,
those finals.
thank you anyway.
I'm sure you'll crush it. I'm sure you'll crush it. But at any rate, I included materials. SWSA has worked really hard to produce. Mine's not opening for some reason right now. A number of items that can be used in advocacy. So if you speak with legislators, those are things that you can use as references. They're items we'll provide to them when we meet with them. And there is also WASB is scheduling a day at the Capitol. That's coming up as well, so that's something we could consider if there was interest in doing that.
Well, and probably one of the biggest things on that is, I mean, the SWSA covers more of the southeast Wisconsin area, and we have about 30-some school districts that are out there. But that group, or our group, stays very, very, very closely connected with the WASB, as well as John's group in terms of the WASBO group that's out there. And then, Mike, you have a district administrator.
WASDA.
WASDA group that's there. And then there's the Rural School Alliances group that's out there as well. And they have tried to really make sure that they stay connected. And that actually, one of the things which was interesting in terms of as I was getting involved in the WASB strategic plan, that's one of their goals too, is to make sure that WASB is staying connected and aligning with the other organizations around the state, so that when we go to the Madison or in the state capitol, that there's an agreement basically that yes, indeed, these are the top priorities that we're looking for out there. So, and to me, that's kind of important. I don't want to have, because if we have a lot of groups in terms of fragmentation, we're not going to get the attention of the people in Madison. So I think that was there. And I kind of preempted a little bit of next week's discussion. I did forward to you guys some of the discussion regarding the special education programming, and John and Mike can speak to that. I mean, we have the discrepancy between the public schools and the private schools, but also just the fact that a lot of that money that has been supposedly there is not been delivered, if you will, over time. And that's why we have a lot of the challenges, I think, with funding some of our special education programs. And again, not just here in Pewaukee, but it's across the state, because every school district has a certain number of special education students, so.
Yeah, you'll hear a lot about special education funding. We're currently, I don't know, it's 29 point some percent, 0.2% reimbursement for public K-12. That's a big push that you'll hear from all kinds of advocacy. It was last time as well. I think that has some potential to go somewhere. Funding in general, there's things that are being advocated for. We had a fiscal cliff that was created in the previous biennium because school districts were given a 0%, zero increase from the state because of the federal funds that were there from the COVID ESSER funds that were there. So districts operated off of those, which was fine for those 2 years, but those federal funds are one-time dollars, and those were gone, and they weren't fully replaced, creating really a deficit in many places, which also has driven a substantial increase across the state in the use of operational referendums is another thing you're going to hear a lot about. We have a funding issue here, which is what's driving this huge increase in operational referendums going out to communities. So those are the kinds of things that you'll hear about. I think the resources that were provided give you a pretty good picture as well. So,
what is the event in Elkhart Lake
Elkhart Lake
in February? The Osthoff.
Oh, the legal.
Yeah, the
legal conference. I honestly was looking at that and personally looking to attend that.
What are the two? There's two tracks. What are the two? WSAAs? I can't remember the two.
is that WASP legal? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's the other group that's there?
It's one of the other ancillary groups, Larry. Do you
The what?
remember, Bren, when we were looking at it?
Yeah.
I don't have it
Okay,
up.
that's all right.
Was it?
It
was
might be
your
the
group?
business officials a lot of
I
times.
can get back to you, Mary. I'll look
It could
into
be WASDA, which is the district administrators group, or it could be WASBO, which is the business officials. I don't have it in front of me, Mary.
And I'm thinking, since you don't know, it's not your group. I mean,
No, it's
so not
possible.
On the
It's
top of your
there's a
head.
lot of events, so it's entirely possible.
Gotcha.
I just don't remember.
The other question I had, just a point of order, are the students required? They're not allowed to leave after their presentation?
Our
Our
student board members? They, the standard expectation is they stay till 9 o'clock or until the meeting adjourns, but I did offer to let them leave early, but they said they were fine. So they can always, you're talking about our student board reps? Yeah.
Yes.
No, they're, the standard expectation is that they're here till 9 o'clock or until the meeting adjourns. But because it's finals, I even said something to them when they came in if they wanted to leave early, but they said they were good staying.
Would there be any reason why they couldn't leave after their presentation?
Because they're student representatives, they're part of the board. They take that role on.
Yeah, as a part of the board establishing those positions, they sit for the meetings. They're here if you ever want to get a student perspective. They're there to provide the board student perspective.
Okay, but
throughout the meeting.
they're not part of the board. And
Right, they don't vote, they don't, right.
People out in the public see this massive board and they're well, they only elected 7 people. What is the rest of these people doing at the board table? But they do leave at 9 o'clock every time. And that makes me wonder, are we compelling them to stay there? Because they don't stay until the end of the meeting if they don't have to, and they don't have to at 9. And I was wondering why that was 9 o'clock. It's kind of artificial.
Yeah, when the board established the student reps probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, 5 years ago, that was kind of how it was designed, right? That we don't want them having to stay super late because they're students. And so 9 o'clock was just picked as a.
Well, and that's my thought. They're clearly not doing anything beyond their report. And I'm uncomfortable compelling them to be here on a school night until 9 o'clock when they could be out of here by 7:15, having given us the opportunity to converse with them giving us their report. The rest of it, they're just burning daylight.
I disagree. They've offered insight during our meetings, and they applied and wanted to be in this position.
Oh, the SAA. The School Attorneys Association, John just said was the other organization.
Yes, the WSAA group.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, last item of business. We need to set the meeting date for the 2025 annual meeting. We've got 4 Mondays in August. We've got the 4th, the 11th, the 18th, and the 25th. So I'll open it up for discussion if anyone has any preferences for any one of those 4 dates.
I'll be available on the 18th and the 25th.
I'm thinking the 25th because isn't that the day that we are regularly asked to do a 7:30 a.m. meeting because you have late hires? So if we're doing the meeting on the 25th, kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah, you are correct. That is typically a day where we have kind of an emergency meeting. Well, it's probably usually on the 26th, but we could do it that evening instead of having the morning of the 26th for last minute hires.
But then that's our only August meeting? Or will
Your
we-
own, that's only your only August meeting is typically, yeah, because you have that short regular meeting that's usually about a half hour, then the budget report, then the annual meeting.
John, does that create any sort of problem for the business affairs? To be meeting at such a late date in the month?
We have the ability to release checks or release payment for anything that would incur a late fee or charges or anything else already. Just as the committee's understanding of that, when that approval is done on the 25th, likely many of those items will be processed already and potentially already paid, given the gap between meetings.
You guys know that, right? They release the checks after we have our meeting and we approve the check register.
You said 18th or 25th?
Is there anyone that has a vacation planned or on any of those dates? Would be a conflict?
So when would we do the one this past August? What was the date?
It was closer to the 18th.
Okay.
This year, John's saying it was the second Monday. I gotta go back.
So the 25th, we'll start doing back to school stuff, right?
We
Definitely back on the 26th.
Right, so if you have people in the public or parents, they'll be back because their kids will be back. They'll have to be back. Instead of cutting in the middle of vacations.
Sorry, Mary, didn't mean to interrupt you. August 12th, if I'm looking at
August
this
12th, okay.
correctly, was our meeting last year.
If both dates work, I would probably vote for the 18th because that week we have all those other commitments where we come to school just to try and lighten the load a little bit.
It is
We
a
come
heavy
back for
week.
the new teacher, we come back for the kickoff,
The breakfast.
the breakfast, yeah. So that would be my 2 cents, but I can make either date.
That sort of sound like you're forming a motion over there or not?
No, I was just giving my 2 cents.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm just trying to encourage you here, Stacy, so.
Okay. Any other preferences? Looks
mean, we
like
do a
we're
quick
looking
show.
at the 18th or 25th.
Yeah. Show of hands, most all of us can make 18th? Is that a?
How many
doable?
can make 18th? How many would prefer the 25th? I guess it looks like we'll go with August 18th then, for our annual meeting this year.
Do they have to make a motion?
Do we have to make a motion for
I
that,
think you have
John?
to make and pass a motion on this.
What's it?
I think you guys have to do a motion.
Yeah.
Pass a
You wanna
motion.
do a motion on
Sure,
that?
I'll move to, approve or designate April, or August 18th, 2025 as the date of the annual meeting for the Pewaukee School District.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Tammy, do we have any citizen comments?
None.
Then with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for a good meeting.
Tammy?